So, this is how you handle your guests' needs with restrictions or allergies. You've already asked your guests about their dietary needs or their preferences or restrictions, and you're now sitting here with a list of that poll, and you're wondering, oh my gosh, this is so overwhelming. Now that I've asked the question, how do I ensure that I meet those needs? I'm here to tell you Caribbean Caterers has the answer. So hi, I'm Jillian with Caribbean Caterers, and we will show you how to get the best menu that will satisfy each and every one of your guests and have them talking about the delicious food at your event. Now you have this list of all those dietary restrictions back from everyone that you've polled. So now that you've asked the question, you've got to deliver, right? You've got to deliver that meal, you've got to deliver it expertly. But you also have your program to remember for the fact that you don't want to have the delivery of this meal, on the one hand, take too long to get to the people with the dietary needs so that they can eat along with all the other guests at their table. And two, you don't want those anomalies to lengthen the service time for your meal, thereby lengthening your program, or rather even shortening your program because the meal had to be lengthened. So we've got to marry those two things together. Understanding the guests at your particular event, marry it into the program and how we're going to get those meals to them, and so that everything can integrate and correlate together smoothly. So you're looking at your list. That's the first thing to do, and say you begin to group the different types of allergies or restrictions or preferences that your guests have noted. Remember, in another talk, we talked about being very precise, very specific, ask specific questions. And so now you're there with the answers to those questions. And so let's say you've got people polling in 5 groups, like vegan, vegetarian, gluten-free, shellfish allergies, lactose intolerant. Those are the 5 big ones. There are others, of course, and as you look at your list, you will determine whether the others are larger categories that we have to pay attention to, or if they are just outliers and I'll show you how we could ensure that they too get a meal that's appropriate for them. So what do? You really have to specialize and personalize the menu for your particular guests. So here's what I mean. If you're sitting with a list that has a good percentage of your guests either vegan or vegetarian, then you might want to simply include a vegan or vegetarian entree in the main meal, because you also have to consider whether you're having a buffet or a plated meal and so on. So indeed, with a large contingent of people having a specific dietary need, you can indeed make the main meal and have the meat eaters be the outliers. That's not typical, but it does happen. So the typical thing would be that you would have chosen a menu generally months before, because remember, at this point your RSVPs are coming back, so you're less than 30 days away from your event. So we're not planning the menu from scratch right now. We would have had a general menu taking into consideration people generally, and now we are going to tweak it for the ones in the poll here that have told you what they need. So let's say you have a small contingent, a small percentage, 3%, 4%, even up to 10% of vegans and vegetarians. You easily can do a vegan entree and just change that vegan entree out for the vegans and vegetarians. They can have the same meal. The importance of trying to limit the number of different meals that you would serve would be because we're in an off-premise situation and we would have had to make up a kitchen at the venue that you're in. You want to be able to plan something that will serve up very quickly. So the fewer varied meals that you have, the faster the culinary team and the wait staff can serve it up and get it to your guests, and again with eyes spied on your program, that we are not lengthening your program in order to do this. So that's the vegans and vegetarians. Now let's say you had a few gluten-free, a few lactose intolerant. What we would have done prior to all of this, in the 6-7 months up to a year before, when we first did the menu for you, we typically, when you're doing a gala and you don't know your guests and you have a very large crowd, 3, 4, 5, 6, 700 people, we would have planned the side dishes in such a way that they would already not be things with gluten and with milk or eggs. So that's a general consideration to start with. But sometimes people want something else. We have some dishes like our macaroni pie that people feel like they must have on their menu. So there are ways to do that. You can incorporate those items in a cocktail reception, so you can still have the flavor of it without having it as the main menu. But if you feel like you must have that, then we will have to also change that item for your gluten-free and your lactose intolerant guests as well. So then we can do a rice or a quinoa additional. But then, as I said, those are the kinds of things that lengthen the time for plating in the kitchen and for delivery to the table. But it certainly can be handled, but you want to keep that in mind as well as you make those decisions. One of the things that's really important with Caribbean Caterers is that, as our roots are in vegan and vegetarianism, and that's what we did in the Caribbean for several years, restaurant in the Caribbean. So it means that all of our menu items, particularly the side dishes, do not have meat or meat parts unless it's in the name of the item. And there's just very few that have meat in the name. So we season with fresh herbs. We do farm to table, so our produce and everything that goes into your menu is fresh, and that's what gives it the great flavor, why we don't need that animal fat or animal parts to create that flavor quotient that people would prefer on their meal. So we've had great success with that, so that in this case with Caribbean Caterers, you're only looking to change out that entree portion, the meat portion, for one of our vegan and or vegetarian entrees that is a center of the plate type entree that replaces the meat very well and gives your guests the notion of a full hearty meal that actually looks like everybody else's and not just something very different or something, a bigger salad or a bowl of pasta to satisfy your vegans and or vegetarians. And so lets us satisfy vegans, vegetarians, gluten-free, shellfish. Again, always we stay away from shellfish for the center plate dinner entree. You can work in your shellfish just like you did your gluten and or lactose items in the cocktail reception, so that you still are having that opportunity to have those things at your reception. But because at that point you have lots of choices, you will still have the vegan, the lactose free, the gluten-free choices for the appetizer items, along with the shellfish items, the coconut shrimp, and the must-have crab cakes, and so on, as well as having other items that everybody else can enjoy. Another opportunity that our chef uses is that there are gluten substitutes on the market that work really well, potato-based and so on. And so we have been known to still have those items like the crab cakes for a gluten-free person who can eat shellfish, so that they can still enjoy those items along with everyone else. One of the things that we have noted is that because we have been crafting this ability to do vegan, vegetarian, gluten-free, lactose-free items for over 30 years, we find all the time that the non-vegetarians, the people who have no dietary restrictions or preferences, enjoy these menu items that we prepare specifically for vegans, vegetarians, lactose, gluten-free, shellfish-free, and so on, just as well as the people who they are prepared for. So that's another major item that works nicely, particularly when we have the hosts being the ones who have dietary restrictions and or preferences, that we can prepare meals that follow those preferences and still have everyone who didn't have those preferences enjoy the meal. And it's a way to introduce them to other options that they might not have been introduced to before. So that's always a nice opportunity at your event as well, if that was something that you're interested in. So we've told you here how to take your list, long or short as it might be, of dietary restrictions, allergies, preferences that your guests might have, and be able to tweak your menu so that you can satisfy them all, that everyone can have a hearty, delicious meal and leave your event well satiated and having great things to say about the food and menus and preparations at your event. If you need to have a consultation with us concerning your menu and the restrictions, that your menu is friendly to your guests who have these restrictions or preferences, please give us a call. And the other aspect of getting this done is not just coming up with a menu, but being able to deliver it expertly to your guests at their table. So in another talk, we will talk about how to seat your guests with these preferences so that we can be successful on the service at your event.